Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Logan with West Desert Wheeler. In today's video, I've got the Trooper Capra out here, rear steer Capra based on Vanquish aluminum axles. I'm gonna go ahead and answer and do a review on the Vanquish Capra axles while we wheel some new terrain that may or may not even be possible. Let's go check it out and let's talk about these axles. All right, guys, so this car started life as an Axial Capra drag axle kit car. So, you know, as basic as it gets. Started life as that and kind of almost immediately started doing modifications to it, including the flat skid plate from UC Fab that still remains in this car. But just about everything else since has changed. So when I built that kit, I put in the flat skid. I also put in a 3-gear transmission, which now it is running an element transmission, but still got the same skid, right? So later on, I just started upgrading the car piece by piece and never even intended for it to become anything like this. It was kind of my secondary Capra. I already had a rear steer brushless Capra on 2.2s, and so I kind of mocked myself and asked people what I should do with the new car because I didn't just need another 2.2 rear steer car, and here we are. To make a long story short, over a year ago now for my birthday, I ended up picking up a set of Vanquish Capra axles, which for myself is not an inexpensive upgrade for the car, and overall still one of the most expensive parts that I've bought for it outside of the cage. But I want to talk about, like, are they worth it? Are they high quality? Should you buy them? That's what I'm going to try and help you guys with today. So there are some key differences between the Capra axles from Vanquish and Capra axles from Axial. The number one difference is going to be that it has an offset differential, and obviously they're made of aluminum. So that's where your main cost comes from, is that it takes time for Vanquish to machine the axles, and they're made in the US, so you're paying for US labor, which is not as cheap as overseas or injection molded labor, right? So that's where the cost of the axle comes from. And so they do not come with internals. They don't have portal boxes. You don't have portal gears. They come with axle shafts because they have the offset differential. And that's going to be a proprietary part for the Vanquish axle. Proprietary meaning that only Vanquish offers that specific offset axle for the car, because the Axial is equal length on both sides. Trying to slowly creep down on this one. Again, these are new obstacles I've never run before, so I'm trying to figure out the line as we go down. So Vanquish does not make knuckles for the axles. Now that is actually one of my complaints, is that I would pay more just to have matching Vanquish knuckles. And I talked to the guys at VP, and they basically said by the time they got around to making the housings, there were already enough aftermarket components available for the knuckles. So they just decided it wasn't worth their time, and more time on the machines and more parts to keep up with, right? More SKUs. So that's unfortunate, because I would really like to own a set of VP knuckles. That was well done. That was cool. One shot of that. Sorry guys, this thing is down in the bottom of the pit and it's really hard to get a good angle from here. So I'm gonna squat down and jump in here. All right, there we go. So the offset differential, basically you will need to have a set of Capra axles to donate as part of building these axles, because you're gonna need the internals for both the portal gears, and then as well as the stub shafts and the cross pins to hold it all together. Yep, kind of figured that was going to happen with that rear once it got pinched. So they're not inexpensive. Not only do you have to buy the housings, but you also have to already own the internals. And trying to buy a set of Capra axles secondhand is expensive. So hopefully you already have a Capra axle to donate to the cause, right? Which I did because I had the Axial Capra first. So that's just something to consider if you want to pick these up. They don't come with that stuff. They also don't come with a ring and pinion, so you will also need, hopefully you have some from those Capra axles. They fit, they're the same, but yeah, you're going to need them to complete the axle and make it function. Now, they do use aluminum third members, and as part of the offset differential, it changes where changes how your differential is used. They actually use one of the link mounts that screws into the differential housing itself. So you got to use a perfect length screw on that, otherwise you can mess up the threads and stuff in your axle housing, which you don't want to do. Trying to figure out this line here. I don't know if this is going to be possible from down and below here. So we may have to pick up the car and try from the other side and try and come up and over this, which would be really cool too. Sydney's behind me panting like a crazy dog. It's 50 degrees and she's dying and burning up. So number one thing is just that I wish Vanquish made knuckles. Now, I have run multiple different brands of knuckles on my car, and in the rear I've got the original Trio aluminum knuckles that I purchased for all four corners on this car when I first did the aluminum knuckle upgrade. Now, Trio works just fine. I've had zero problems with them and the fitment's good. It all functions great. The other brands I've ran is actually the Axial plastic boxes, which I've found to get the most steering angle from the Axial plastic boxes, just because the aluminum knuckles, they're a little bit thicker, and then there's certain areas where you need the clearance that Axial provides, and the aluminum knuckles just don't offer it. Yeah, we're gonna have to approach this from a different direction here, guys. It's not looking like it's possible to climb this. So the other knuckle brands that I have tried on these axles have been Hot Racing, the really big chunky brass ones. Those do fit. However, you will lose steering angle just because they added so much brass, you miss out on clearance. And so it can't turn as sharp. So that's something to be aware of with the really big, heavy Hot Racing knuckles. Typically, I run a brass patty from that same Hot Racing knuckle, and you can run those on different aluminum boxes if they fit correctly. You always need to check fitment to make sure that you have a sealed portal box, because I run in a lot of sand, and you don't want sand or dirt and water getting into your portal boxes. That can destroy your gears prematurely. Oh, it's just not quite enough grip to push up into this. It's really close. So I've run Hot Racing, I've run Trio portal boxes, I've run the Capra plastics, and currently I've got SSD brass knuckles as well as outer portal covers on here. So I found that with this car I just wanted a little more weight, nothing too crazy, nothing like that Hot Racing setup. I just wanted enough weight out on the portal cover as well as the knuckle itself. So that's kind of the direction I went most recently, and I'm really liking it for this car. Gives it a nice balance, and it added 1.5 ounces over my previous setup, so it gives me a little more forward weight bias. Trying to figure out this puzzle in here. I think we had it for a second. Oh, that was close. So right there, we're getting a good example of one of the things I want to talk about, and that is strength. Nice. So these Vanquish axles I have run on my four-wheel steer buggy, which I like to go out and pursue the most difficult technical lines that I can find. This car is not necessarily my absolute highest performance in like vertical hill killing, but I put this thing into a lot of stupid cracks and binds, and I usually just try and power through them when it gets bound up. So it makes me a bad driver, but at the same time, it also puts these components to the test in the most extreme possible way. So I've gotten this thing wedged up quite a lot of times where I've just powered through, and man, do these axles take a beating. So once you go to aluminum axles like these, you no longer break axle housings. I've had zero issues with any kind of breakage, and overall have had a very good luck with the quality and the strength of these things. However, once you eliminate your axle braking, when you take a big slam, the strength or the shock of that has got to go somewhere. Typically, I end up breaking rod ends now. So hopefully it's on the axle side when it breaks, but when it's on the skid plate side, it's kind of annoying and it sucks. But that's typically what happens. Instead of the axle braking, I break rod ends now, which is good because they're super cheap and easy to replace. If they're in the skid plate side, it's a little more tricky, but still not that bad overall. So one feature on the Vanquish Capra axles is that they have axle mounted steering, just like the original Capra. So that's great. Still maintains 4-link, and then it's also got removable link mounts on the axle. So you have to mount them in the correct position, so just kind of be aware of that when you're building them. And then for the axle, for the servo on axle mount, I ran the Axial plastic mount for a long time. And that's because I've owned these things for over a year, and those Vanquish servo mounts have not been in stock for a very long time. So finally, I just kind of got fed up with waiting, and I bought some hot racing aluminum Axial Capra servo mounts. So other brands of servo mounts, at least the hot racing ones, mounted up just fine, and same with the Axial plastic mount. They do come with little standoffs for your servo mount, so just like a little aluminum spacer that your M3 screw goes through. And yeah, that's how you mount up your servo on the Capra axle from Vanquish. So we've got Sydney down here. We got a pretty big ledge right here. The angle is not bad at all. It's just about flat, but you know, there's always risk involved. I could mess it up. I've seen me do it. All right, very cool. Just the right width to let an RC car through. Now that has been one of my probably biggest issues with the Capra axles from Vanquish, is that my servo mounts come loose all the time and it drives me crazy. Yes, I use Loctite on the screws, but I use very powerful servos and I put it in very aggressive binds, and with 1,025 ounce-inches of torque in the front with the Shift GT3 servo, and then I think it's like 925, 975 of torque with the direct power X2 from Shift in the rear. These things just work themselves loose. When I get in a bind, and especially with the plastic mounts, you know, if the wheel and tire can't turn, it just sends all the power to whatever will turn, and typically that's the mount with the plastic because it had flex in it, and then eventually it just wiggle its way loose. So that's an annoying thing that I've experienced with these, is that my servo mounts get loose on this car a lot. And I don't want to like kill them with torque putting them on, but I do believe these are 7000 series aluminum, so they are quite strong. So the threading in there should last a good long time. I've had a few screws actually die on me on this car, and what's very interesting is that the M3 screws, probably, I'm assuming they were made in China, the thread has failed on the screw before the axle threading has failed. So that's a good thing. The axle is less likely to get stripped if the screw will lose the fight. So that's nice. And where they have stripped on me is actually the differential, where the link goes, where the link sits next to the diff. I put a Deez company shock band on the front of my car, and I guess at one point I put the original screw back in and I didn't realize it, so it didn't have enough thread engagement, and so I think it pulled out the threads on the diff housing there, but that's kind of my mistake. It didn't have sufficient thread engagement. Ooh, that was close. Oh shit. That wasn't good. Hey, remember when I said I've seen me do it? That's what I'm talking about right there. Motor's still working. We'll have to go check our rod ends. But hey, what a good testament to the strength of the axles by rolling it off 8 to 10 foot cliff in the middle of the review. Let's take a peek under the car. My battery fell out, that's fine. Rod ends are intact. They haven't even come off the pivot balls. So yeah, all right. Thankfully, landed in mostly soft sand. So we'll get the battery back in and we'll get back on that obstacle. So in running with these metal axles, I've also had a few other things like aluminum portal boxes along with metal housings. I've broken the factory injection, I don't know what the hell they are, MIM parts from Axial. The stock Axial portal gears, I've exploded 2 sets of those in it. So I ended up going to overdrive gears in both sets of portal axles because I'm running a 3 gear into these axles anyway. So I've got lots of gearing reduction. So that actually helps speed the car up overall. And I've enjoyed that, and I haven't broken any portal gears since. So they are a machine gear at that point, so they're a lot stronger than the stock Capra gears are. But again, this is all subject to me being very mean to this car and forcing it through binds that it does not want to go through. And then I just try and force it through anyway, because it's kind of my style. I want to go through the wild lines, right guys? You drop your front tire in there. Maybe we'll just go over the rock. That'd be cool. Settle. Get that rear to climb. Bring the front back up. No, not wanting to do it. I'm also standing on a cliff edge and I don't really want to fall off of it. So now that's one thing I should probably highlight because we just watched me. I literally watched the car fall off the cliff. And that is, if your car is going to fall off a cliff, guys, just don't go for it. Just let the car fall. Like, the cost of this versus the cost of, I don't know, hospital bills, not even remotely close. I would much rather destroy this car entirely than have to deal with that. And then like being hurt and stuff, that always sucks. So yeah, don't chase your car off a cliff, just let it fall. Is there more I could have done to stop it from falling? Sure, but you know, we all make our choices. All right. Oh, this is gonna get bad here in a second. Front axle is completely vertical. Yep. Okay, I caught it on that one. There you go. You guys saw it. Not sure there's a way up and around this. I'm trying to figure it out. You know what? There is a crack up the other side, so let's try a different path up and out of this ledge. And then we'll get back to our review on the Vanquish Capra axles. Yes, a key piece of information that you need to know. Your stock Capra links come with a slightly wider pivot ball than Traxxas or what Vanquish uses. Vanquish has machined these link mounts and shock mounts to that smaller pivot ball size. So if you try and put your stock Capra links and the rod ends in there, they don't fit. But you can get a set of calipers out and you can find the smaller pivot ball size. I don't know what millimeter they are. It's not a huge difference, but it's just enough to where the stock Capras do not fit. So keep that in mind. And it's kind of annoying, like when you swap shocks around or when you swap links around, you have to have that narrower pivot ball for them to mount in the Vanquish axles. So that's definitely something very important to know about these. So keep that in mind when you pick these up. It's a really small little thing. It's not a big deal. You just get the right pivot balls. They're inexpensive compared to the axles. But if you don't order them when you order your axles, you're going to be a little disappointed while you wait for your pivot balls to show up and you have your axles sitting on the shelf. Here we go. This is working good. Liking where this is headed. Good and off camber. I'm going to drop that rear a little bit. So dropping that rear is going to extend the shock on the right rear and the left front. If the shock is extended, that means that there's less pressure on that tire. So that's helping take pressure off that front left tire and lets it climb while just dipping that rear, and then that front right carried the front end up in there. And then we're gonna do the opposite, right? We're gonna turn high in the wall to extend that left rear shock. Front end's floating and it's gonna help carry that left rear right up and over that ledge. So that's how I navigate obstacles like that. Now I had pre-walked this area just to get an idea of like where I'd want to run for the video and stuff. And I was very concerned about the width of this obstacle. Looks like we're gonna get a little further than I thought we will, but we're gonna start getting into serious binding if we don't watch ourselves. So let's do this intentionally. Let's two-tire it. And we'll just try and scrub our sidewalls along. And we should be able to keep the car pretty well balanced doing that. And then the rear, we should be able to just drop a tire in completely once the front is out and settled. That rock's gonna really mess us up here in a second. Yeah. Even the Shift X2 struggling for torque right there. Oh, we're gonna lose that wall. Okay. Oh, we dropped to the bottom. So we need to turn away from the wall at the rear. Come on, car. We've gotten this far. Now I need to figure out a way to get the cage out of there. Oh, that is so close to fitting. Okay, let's just try a little reverse, and then we'll try and come out on top of the rock instead. Nice, nice. That was awesome. That worked out really, really well. One other component on the axle side of things, stub shafts. Do they hold up? I have bent Axial Capra factory stub shafts, and I've replaced them with Vanquish, and I've bent the Vanquish multiple times. So if you take a hard enough slam, you're gonna bend your stub shaft. It's just kind of how it is. It's unfortunate. It's hard for me to like factually say one is stronger than the other. I don't really know. Yeah, but typically Vanquish stub shafts are what's in stock at my local hobby shop, Spec RC in St. George. Cody down there at Spec RC carries the full line of Vanquish products, so he's usually got a lot of good stuff sitting on the shelf, which is really convenient when you don't want to wait on shipping. So if you're looking for some Vanquish stuff, hit up Spec RC, and yeah. Oh, yeah. Overall, do I recommend picking up these axles? Absolutely, I do, if you are hard on your components. As you saw in this video, the thing fell off a 12-foot cliff, and I'm really not even shaken up about it. Not that I necessarily want to do that, or that like it's that normal that that happens. Typically when I've got the camera running, I don't fall off stuff like that. So a little strange that it did. Although like that's the kind of stuff I do with my cars. I go out, I run hard obstacles, and you know, sometimes you take a fall, which is unfortunate, but it's part of the risk that we run doing what we do out here on the rocks. Yeah, so we're gonna have to go from the bottom on this climb, and then we're gonna go up to the top of this, which is actually a real trail that they ran in Trailbreaker, which is pretty wild. But since I've purchased these, they were my first set of aluminum housings from Vanquish, and I've had no regrets since. And because of these, I've bought more sets of Vanquish housings. I've got the D44 straight axles, which are a super scale, great looking axle. One thing that I considered was the anodizing color, and so I went with clear anodize on these, figuring that the clear would show scratches less. You still can tell that they've been scratched, it's no big deal, but I've always intended on using mine. So, you know, kind of wear your scratches with pride that they were earned, I would say. The D44s I own, same thought process. I got those in raw too, and they're not raw, they're clear anodized. But my final set that I got are F10 portals, and I bought the aluminum housings for those. And those I actually got in black anodized just to try something different, see how it went. And I kind of surprised my own friends with that. They were like, whoa, I didn't expect you to get the black ones. We figured you'd get the raw, because that's what I've done previously. Oh yeah, I do have black F10T axles as well. Those are on my Sage Toyota pickup. Dang, I'm getting quite the collection of Vanquish stuff, huh? I do enjoy their axles, not only for the scale looks, the increased strength, but also, you know, the added steering ability on these. All the Vanquish axles have like 50 degrees of steering capability, which that last few degrees really makes a difference when you're out there on the trail. Sometimes you literally just need to be able to turn that far instead of this far. So sometimes it really makes the difference, and I'll take all the steering I can get. If I could get these things to turn like 65, I'd go for 65. One very important last detail that I want to mention. The axle shafts themselves from Vanquish on these have been incredibly strong, and I've had zero issues. I've run this car a little bit in water, not much. I've driven it through a few puddles, but I do routine maintenance, like wiping out the universal joint on them, making sure there's no sand and grit in there. But like the shock oil and stuff has leaked on them and filled them with sand, and I've crawled them for months like that. And like in super abrasive conditions, they're still super strong. I've put these into binds, you wouldn't believe, over and over and over again, and repeatedly these shafts just take it. They don't really care. So big thumbs up for the strength of the axle shaft used in these cars. And I'm using them at full 45 to 50 degrees of steering as well. So there's a lot of times where these things are getting put through a lot of stress. And again, time after time, they're working for me. And my car isn't incredibly fast, but it is torquey with a lot of this gear reduction that I have. It's capable of sending a lot of power to those axle shafts. And they are not the weak link in the system, I can vouch for that. typically I will bend a stub shaft, break a portal gear, or the motor will give up trying to push before these axle shafts have ever let go. And at this point, I've wheeled this thing so much that even if one did break, I really wouldn't be upset. I certainly feel that I've gotten a lifespan's worth out of these axle shafts, but they just keep ticking. So I'm gonna keep going with them, and if I ever do break one, I'll let you guys know, but I don't really see that happening. And again, they're a wear item, so like eventually they should and will fail. But the question is, how much further can they go? Not quite getting that balanced pinch I'm looking for here. Come on. Very mossy climb on this. These G8 crawlers that I have done my cut and shut process on. Lots of traction, but it's really hard to fight with the loss of traction created by the moss. There we go. Give it a little juice on the way up, then we'll cross back over, get balanced up again. And you guys know I love to run cracks, so there you go. That has been my review on the Vanquish products, Capra axle housings, their shafts, and then all of my experience along with it as far as what portal boxes work. And yeah, overall, huge thumbs up. I really like them. They do not stick to the rocks like a lot of people kind of claim that they will. Maybe slightly more, but I mean, I've put these things on the axle housing a lot, and very rarely am I like, oh, it's the aluminum axle housing that's stopping me from making this climb. Usually it's just the fact that I'm doing some ridiculous crazy climb, and I don't think I've ever tried to blame the stiction of aluminum to the rocks. Now granted, I'm on sandstone most of the time, so it does slide a little easier than like some of the really extreme granite found in California. So in my terrain, I don't seem to have that issue. We're gonna get this crossover up here, and then we're gonna be at the top of the mountain here in a second. I'm gonna give you guys the view, and we're gonna close out the video. But I hope you guys enjoyed the review. I've got a lot of time spent with these axles. These are my most used axles because this is my most used car, and I've put them through hell and back, and really, honestly, they just keep ticking. They don't care. The car's been great. The ring and pinions have never given me a piece of trouble at all. That is the nice part about the aluminum housings and the machined third members, is that you don't get any amount of flex like a plastic differential housing could possibly give. Not saying that I've necessarily had issues with my plastic Capras in that way, but if you were to get that issue, it's much less likely to happen with the aluminum housings. The machine tolerances and fitment has been great. The finish on all the parts is great. These are the best looking Capra axle housings available, no doubt. They just look real. I spend a lot of time around the real portal cars, and they look fantastic. I wish that Vanquish would do an opposite offset axle for a rear steer car. So right now my drive shafts are all crisscross on my car setup here. But here we are at the top of the mountain. Sydney made it up here with us. I want to send a shout out and thank you to you guys for watching. I'm going to watch my step here. As we get up to the top here, huge drop off the backside here, pretty wild. The craziest part is that this was a trail breaker course, and people have driven their buggies right where I'm standing. So they drove up here, and I mean, they had their front tires hanging off the edge of this freaking drop off over here. Like 50, 60 feet right there, no joke. No shorter than that. Sydney's up here like a mountain goat. She's gonna say goodbye to you guys. Huh, Sid, good dog. Chupa made it to the top, no doubt, and no surprise, I should say. Yeah, just imagine a full-size buggy. You're in the driver's seat. They drove up here, they pivoted around, and then they backed down this. People are wild, man. People are wild. If I had my own, would I do it? I don't think I'm at that level yet, but it does look pretty damn fun. So thank you guys for watching. I greatly appreciate it. My name's Logan with West Desert Wheeler. Hope you enjoyed the review. If you're thinking about buying some, it has a full big thumbs up in my book. There are a few little things like those servo mounts coming loose. It's not a big deal, and the threading on them hasn't come out or anything, so I've had zero issues with the axle housings themselves. I would say absolutely go for it, but they are not inexpensive, so if you can afford it, go for it. I splurged a little bit, and I haven't regretted it since. We'll see you guys in the next one. Keep the rubber side down.